Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another night of Tuesdays for the Poetry. I'm your host, Gary Dale Burns, and this is another year of poems from my mind and my heart and my soul shared with you on a Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight is the 15th night of 25 nights. And tonight we'll be reading poems from the year 2014, a first full year that myself and my partner Gillian spent living in New York City in the East Village. And for my own part, I worked at Strand Bookstore. Strand Books, that has been an institution off of Broadway in Lower Manhattan for a very long time. Not quite a century, but it's getting there. 18 miles of books, if you can believe it. And I want to give a shout out real quick to a number of my fellow employees, and some of whom were part of a writer's workshop known as the Grass Snakes, who helped me to refine and compose and write many of the poems that you will hear this evening. So I'd like to say hello to Gary Lime, to Kristen, to Olivia, to Colin, to Kenneth. So many people. Michael, Rochelle, Martine, Ben McFall, rest in peace. There's so many people. Jorge, James, I could go on. Both the Scotts, Carolyn. I mean, it was a wonderful time to be sharing ideas and sharing work and creating new work. And for those of you that are creatives, I hope that you are able to find those kinds of communities in your life where you are able to share those energies together and you are able to create work that you're proud of and that you would like to share. I usually have like a book recommendation, and I'm looking at my desk here. I don't have anything that I have in my bag, but I do have something that I've been reading off and on. It's called Poets at Work. Gary Lime, actually, who I just mentioned, he sent this along to me. This is a number of interviews with Paris Review interviews with poets over the years, mainly throughout the 20th century, and it has allowed me to see the sort of processes that other poets go through, and also the thought and the feeling behind their work, or at least as much as they would like to share. But it's a big tome. I've been going through it chronologically, and so far I've read the interviews with Robert Lowell, Marianne Moore, and Ezra Pound. So actually, the interviews only start in the 60s. So the oldest interviews in here are from 1961. And the most recent interview is with Susan Howe. I'm sorry, no, Frank Bedard, 2019. He's an amazing poet. So that's my recommendation, Paris Review book of interviews with other poets. So again, we have this evening poems from the year 2013. Did I say 2014 earlier? And those poems will continue through this volume, and we'll actually go to another volume that I have with me here. It's a really special notebook. It looks like a stone, actually, like a geode. So this starts November 13th. This is the fourth volume of my poems, and it's malachite. It's a copper related mineral, which is only fitting with my copper related hair. So I misspoke earlier. 2014. No, it's actually 2013. So it's covering more so the year that Gillian and I moved across the country from Portland, Oregon, and um, settled in the city. So a number of these are still written in Portland. So we'll start our evening off with Bridal Veil. Bridal Veil Falls is a waterfall that's in the Columbia River Gorge. It's a extremely beautiful place. So here we go, Bridal Veil. And if love is looking together in the same direction, nod at each other, what thing do I glimpse aloft, and where do you notice the trail twisting off? Temperance on the sawhorse. Half of you and the hilt of me, riding through all this carpentry, from the knot of abstinence to the unrest, crossbone fingers, gripping latitudes. Palms reading palms. I have my eyes in the small of your back, through your dural sack, and that droning beehive alive as a building block, your freckles a flock of salvation gulls on salt flats. Sodden raincoats, steam kisses rest on drinks of air between bats of blackened lashes cut, an equinox, a premature Halloween, dressed up for weddings under umbrella canes. So next one is called The Design of Surprise. This one was published in the third issue of Cavalcade. I fished that out last time. Um, Published by my friend Cutter Williams, who now resides in his home state of Kentucky. The design a surprise, narrow by and for, bifurcated beginnings clasp themselves to the lack thereof, turnkey twisting the melody, inside neither flesh nor soul, fool of a jack that slings through terror on a just arc to bend back upon the bower. Bring the children to hear siege works and Cuban song, run with them along some streets, grinding organs and bone to their picket fence gate. Home, a fossilized notion, where to sleep, dreams or memories broken open. Lidless, we dare not crack up, lashing out at a disservice due. To us alone, who plopped our half dollars, dredged from a parent's wallet, into the palm of a stinking monkey. Glittering silver his custody, both curious and unimpressed. So, old image there of an organ grinder, right? Organ grinder with his monkey collecting coins. Next poem is Song of Bereavement. What did he sing? Contention, houses of it, a line to banal assurance. In any case, the block drops, lifting a plank of counterweight as he mimicked a motivated drive. Halt your crisp and brainless anger. From Little Bighorn to Devil's Tower, there had been no disagreement. Mount Rushmore to Sears Tower, the road trip was displacement. Arrival began the end of patriarchy, subsumed in my spermarchy. Song of bereavement, like a solar flare, crackling against stratosphere. How could you contain us? O Father, quiet, quiet, disaster made your ruin. So vital a strain, ab ovo. That one was related to my father, only fitting with Father's Day having just passed this weekend. Sonnet 13. Look at this. We've got Sonnet 13. So here we go. Most of these sonnets, just to be clear, I was completely amateur with them. I am uh, not committed to the iambic pentameter that Shakespeare and Petrarch most certainly did a better job with. But here we go, anyways. Wrap you in mental bows, in shafts and flights of hope that fly the spun zoetrope to fell what eagles know. Terribly high, the arc unjust, each young shot launched above the pedestal of ideal love that stands on mutual trust. Leaden tips and supple yew with imitations artless make could ne'er invest a single stake through the arrow's flight to you. But with the crafted aim art has hurled, it lands within earshot of your world. It's about a week after Gillian and I's first Valentine's Day. Next, we have a haiku. Haiku fans, where are we at? We had waffles and not a 8-3. Well, here's a haiku for them, anyways. Reading, I reflect an image of clouds parting, warmth, sun, cheery face. Ah, this is a great one. This poem means a lot to me. Why? Because the first thing that I wanted to be was an astronaut. So before teaching, before anything, first thing I wanted to be was an astronaut. And a number of the poems in Humility and other poems have to deal with this strain that I feel between earth and sky, which is a strain that we feel as a species right now because we have promises from billionaires and other organizations that at some point in the near future we will colonize another world, and that there's some kind of counterweight to this idea and the total climate crisis that we're living through right now that might see our extinction from this very planet. So this idea that, this idea that we're simultaneously needing to become more firmly rooted in the earth and become more unified and harmonious with the very processes of this planet. At the same time, this idea that maybe we can find a solution out there. So I feel that tension. I feel that struggle. It's in my mind a lot. I became a poet. I didn't. Science was not as strong. Biology and earth science, great. Chemistry did me in. Physics, that's a whole nother thing. I can read physics. I can read Niels Bohr. I can read Heisenberg. I can read some of Einstein and understand it, but yeah. So, anyways, this poem is called From Another Canaveral, if I haven't said the title. So we have Canaveral, Cape Canaveral in Florida, where many of NASA's launches happened, from which many space shuttles were launched. So another Canaveral, what might that be? Picking the apples gracefully, you put them in your basket. A stroke of each imagining as you go swimming in the air 1,000 times thicker than what those lungs were made for. Reaching out, you clutch vertical significance. The first day of tranquility was gray and black and space soot, and every breath from Neil to Jean breathed out a blue marbled sphere. Apostles, one quicker than when earth flung its savior up and off to such apocryphal transcendence. Your spade to Anthropocene turns up a salt brick. Bowie's been answered, it seems, faceless Mars, ironic. But of our agape jawbones do we make ossuary stones? Moonscapes now grace our gallery walls, and bones aren't buried, they're burned. This next poem is for my mother. It's called A Mother's Cup. Cup. A mother's cup always runneth over, and brings the essential things, vitamins and minerals, from buried root to tip of wing. She gives, and we taketh over and over. The food of inspiration throws us out of our nest, out of tree, little seeds that, when nourished, grow. And it is a single wonder that mother's tears sink as we fall. With the same water blessing, she lifts us up to fly with the call. Even to live and love amidst this thunder, welcoming rain to the earthly mother. The next poem is called Name. It was written at Manuka, which was a men's retreat that I went to in Oregon because I was part of a Unitarian Universalist congregation along with Gillian the first year that we were together. And we were searching there. We were asking, questioning. But this poem was trying to think about my name but also masculinity. And it's one of the seeds of a few poems that I have, which over time are beginning to develop into something that could be considered a work on masculinity and what that is in its own limiting experience in my body, in myself, this experience. So my name is Gary. Gary is an Anglo-Saxon name. And if you guys know anything about Anglo-Saxons, that's the seedbed of England right there. Anyone who wants to trace Englishness traces it back to the Anglo-Saxons, to Beowulf. So Gary, and Gary means spear bearer. Spear bearer. So here's name. I am an archer without bow, spear bearing, but not in sport. I send out longing over the dale of life for the night, for the right war. I launch the longing out toward my brother and sister, this sharp dart of love, timing each throw open and vulnerable. My strength a wish, my focus an aim of righteousness. Piercing cloudy minds with luck, I am a revelator. Unto myself, end God, my estimator. Standing near the shifting Burns, which is my sustenance and my boundary. Gary, I balance the staff. Dale, it flies overhead. Burns, my love flows through this being with a name. Okay. The next poem is upon finishing the Aeneid. So the Aeneid, of course, is, as some people put it, the poem by Virgil that is the Roman version of the Odyssey. And yes, there's definitely much to that. And there's also much nationalism that is wrapped up in the Aeneid, because it purports to be the tale of the ancient years before the founding of Rome, and that the mythical brothers Romulus and Remus, who founded Rome, well, Romulus killed Remus, so it could be named Rome and not Remo. And Virgil is credited with planting the kind of roots to this. But I think rather, and the reason why I read the Aeneid was through Dante and through the Divine Comedy, and I wanted to know a little bit more about why Dante seemed to be influenced by the Aeneid. And clearly, it's because first off, Dante was Italian, and the Aeneid is the founding poem of Italy. And he felt in his exile, mind you, right? I mean, if you guys don't know this, Dante was exiled from his city of Florence. And when you were exiled from your city, cities and states were codependent. It's almost like if you were from Detroit and you were exiled from Detroit, going to any other major city in the United States. Imagine the United States where if you were not from Detroit, you were not welcome and you were not considered a citizen. That's the kind of level of exile that Dante went through. So in his exile, naturally, he must have poured over Virgil. He must have tried to understand what it's like to be in exile and to be someone who is thrown out of their homeland. I myself feel that I am an American, a Western American, and that brings me a certain level of understanding of homeland as something that partakes of an entire nation. But a city state is much smaller. And when I finished reading the Aeneid, in a translation by C.D. Lewis, who was Daniel Day-Lewis's, the actor's father, a great British poet and professor of poetry at one point, he, for me, showed that Virgil was a poet of extremely crystal clear imagery. I don't think I have ever read anything that had like such vivid, even over the Odyssey. There's passages in the Odyssey that I remember, but um, and that I repeat to my students. But there's something about the Aeneid's imagery that is just strong, so strong, and yeah, so I finished the Aeneid. I finished it. It's a actually. Let me get it real quick because it's a wonderful cover. I have a big collection of these. These, of course, are the Doubleday Anchor paperback books, and this is the Aeneid of Virgil, the exact copy that I read, uh, translated by C.D. Lewis, with a cover by Edward Gorey, who did many, 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 many of the Doubleday Anchor paperback covers. If not illustrations himself, then also the wording. I'm sorry, the lettering, the lettering. So he did the lettering on that too. I know it's backwards, but anyways, I spent a good year with the Aeneid, and here's the poem upon finishing the Aeneid. A moment of mercy passes back into rage, though it had been raised by Turnus's entreaty. And then revenge, life for life. Old law of holy retribution. It shall be thus, stark and Virgilian. In its end, strife upon strife. Okay. Okay. Next poem is part of a sequence. It's I wrote it out of sequence, but this is the first one. It's called Alma Mater. Has to do with past college experiences. Cackling, unapologetic humanist versus timid, tender, tiptoeing apologist. Still lives stay their waxed gilt gold frames of usury until crack goes the crook of a black swan's neck. So type ill liked and post ear bled. Hanging from the college, applicant withdraws attention. Doubt of change amid terms compromised by their undertaking. Makeup? Well, let me paint a new face, blemished with divergency. Unread online university. But as for education, level up. Student of Syntopicon. Next poem is another reading poem. So I had one about finishing the Aeneid. This one is on Jerusalem, the long poem by William Blake. What is it to build? Okay, I need to preface this. Golgonooza is, in Blake's terminology, is the city of imagination. The city of imagination. It is a representation, symbolic representation of the very center of whatever it is in human beings that is divine and that generates creativity. So just, that's Blake's reading, but here's my question. What is it to build Golgonooza? Moat of fire encircling, bellows of Bolahula, golden, glowing cathedron. Blake had website, visited by a lark, shaking off Lambeth chalk, to sing vowels, to be held by his consonants. So there's that. As you can notice, some of these words, there's this. A lot of this is just influenced by a lot of deep reading. I wish I could have these sort of, on the screen for you guys, but I can't. Sale of the Humanities. Dog-ear Sale of the Humanities. Dog-ear the page corner on sustainable developing. Crease off more and ink it too. Underline, highlight, scribe, marginalia of ejaculated pride. Sell back your used, stale activity. Keep your iconic sign. Retrofit for seismic upgrade. Dump stock and signify low interest. Well, then, a square deal sale of the humanities. McKibben on the marquee of Burnside. Daydreamed conversation with eavesdropped neighbors. Terminus of your will, the station or umbra horizon, which can no longer behold thought. The beacon of your intelligence, vanishes in a point. Haiku, untitled. One moment, she says, without speaking, finger raised, halting time and space. Ah, this poem. Okay, this next poem is called Clemency Waived. Clemency Waived. And we've got Pope Francis in this poem, not the slam poet slash hip hop artist. But we've got, I'm sorry, P. Francis. We've got Pope Francis. He's P. Francis in the poem, but that's a different one. Matthew Thomas Ross would understand that. We've got Thomas Hardy, though. We've got Pope Francis. We've got Thomas Hardy. We've got R. Buckminster Fuller in this poem. We have Unitarians in the poem. We have anarchists in the poem. This poem's full of people. So here we go. I'm being very excited about this poem because this poem, if you hear it, I think says a lot about my frustration with this conversation between what's spiritual and what's religious. What's spiritual, what's religious. So I start things off there. Spiritual, not religious. Absolute, non-existent. Language of anarchism. Near lethal dose of irony. Your commodified tongue from a mouth cursing dogma. Religion without mysticism is philosophy, saith Pope Francis, making two churches one. Well, Hardy, has Whitebeard's remains quickened to dust before the agnostic's wobbly transience? Idle wheel, no distortion. Raleigh knew at least this of Jesus, as Lakeside Bucky knew universe. Sigh with me. There you are. Scout escape off the page. Clemency waved with a wrist turn. The friends silent pray and Unitarians sing. Taxes make tithing arcane. Bless us a sneeze. Achoo. Intercede, but leave out divinity. Bless you. And stop short of faith healing. Next poem is called One Lumen 2. So a lumen is a unit of illumination. One lumen is equal to the light of one candle. Didn't know if you knew that, but when you see 400 or 300 lumens, it's like what it means is a lumen's just we've got a candle. What's the light from one candle? That's a lumen. So we got one and we got two. One lumen, two. One candle, two candles. I leave it be. Keep it from a masquerade. And every play you stage in your looking glass menagerie to all acclaim and none displeased, you make it look so easy. Love. Ha! Sarcasm springs. Fountain more like a frothing. Shored between Narcissus' face and fair Echo's green. Echo's nearer to a hoax, you think. Something you read about grunge speak. You. True belief in what it is that you can see. Dilemma of a dark need insurgency. When whosoever looks is looked upon and found frozen in its gaze. To just as well identify this candle with the sun, a flicker as a flame. Steadier now, don't snuff it out. Keep it dark. Wait for the curtain. Your performance will certainly entertain. Okay, that was it for volume 3. So we got the Malachite, volume 4 now. Um, yeah, not many here to get too far into. We're only going up to the end of 2013, and it looks like I've got there's just two left. There's just two left. That's it. That's it. Um, I don't know why I thought I was reading 2014 tonight. Must have got mixed up. Um, Okay, so next poem. Again, I have to preface these humility poems because there's just a lot going on. So the next poem we've got a few things going on. Joe Sacco is a contemporary graphic novelist who put together a very magnificent and long, stretched out multi-cell landscape of the Battle of the Somme from the First World War, the Great War. And I've done a lot of reading on the Great War because I noticed that in the US, the emphasis is on World War II. And if it's not World War II, it's on the Revolutionary War or the Civil War. And for some reason, the Great War and the War of 1812 are like these wars that are just sort of relegated to back pages. Maybe because they were short, our involvement was short, and there's something about that. But there's something again. There's something English in my blood and in me and in my reading and in my name, and I continue to be fascinated by the Great War, by World War One. There's something about that war, which I think shattered all hope for the 20th century. And I think the World War One showed us, humanity, that we were more willing to sacrifice human beings in the name of profit, nationalism, and just straight up chaos than we were committed to creating a better world. It's always easier to destruct than to construct. And I think when World War One happened, the Great War happened, um, I think people lost their sense of hope in humanity. And I think it's just been downhill since then. And so I struggle to have hope in humanity, and this is part of that. Attrition, just to let you know, a war of attrition, in case you don't, Attrition, a war of attrition is a war of numbers, a numbers game, meaning that generals and commanders of armies factor into their battle plans deaths. They factor in a certain number of people will die, and they use that number to create strategic advantages, meaning that real human beings will be mowed down, will be destroyed. Their existences will no longer be. Um, and a number, whether it's 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever, 100,000, um, look up the Battle of the Somme if you want to check it out. I mean, SOMMES. It was unprecedented, the level of human death in 24 hours in human history. But anyways, Kitchener was a commanding general in the British Army, and this was his strategy. He very much saw World War One as a war of attrition, and in attrition, if we could just keep supplying men, eventually we would get the advantage. Um, so you know, it's just inhuman. The idea that people create a circumstance in which human lives, right? I mean, we are born, we have childhoods, we live, we have dreams, we have hopes. Like we have consciousness to a high degree, higher than anything else on earth. And to just have us be turned into a number. Again, I just think it presages everything else that went wrong in the 20th century. 20th century is a total absolute fucking bloodbath. And let's not make the 21st one either. We're not doing a good job so far, but we'll see. So, I like. Can you see that we've got the volcano here? Volcano through the flowers. That's all Gillian. So here's Kitchener's attrition. Try to follow me. Slightly rhetorical. Wizened hand pawing a mouse, moved to roll over, answers, a man? Am I? Nous sommes deux. Devonshire's holding it still, questions before and well unto the end. Great rivers, forked by bayonets and helmets. Joe Sacco drafts the Somme and the far off Belgian horizon that rose up like Pompeii over each poet, baker, groomsman, to wed their deafened ears to the ground. Kitchener's attrition, populated sorrows in English hearts, and what the reaper took left empty hands to cheer, woo, the war to end all wars. I read Wilson's conscription tears, not as shameful, but rightful terror. And I guess I have to preface, or I have to do a postscript to that poem, because yes, was Woodrow Wilson an anti-Semite and a racist? Yes. Did Woodrow Wilson show the birth of a nation at the White House? These things are unavoidable, especially so soon after Juneteenth. But also, Woodrow Wilson apparently wept when he had the U.S. enter the war, because, again, we entered the war late. We entered World War One in the last year of the war, and he was well aware that Kitchener, amongst other European um, commanders, were fighting a war of attrition, and that by signing that war order was ensuring the deaths of American young men, like absolutely, to a high degree, like no doubt. So yeah, what was that emotion? Maybe he didn't have much emotion for the Jewish American or the African American, but I do think that that emotion was for Americans, which in itself is problematic. I have much to say about nationalism, but I'll leave that be. Let's go back in time to ancient Greece, shall we? Because your boy reads a lot, and as much as he likes Plato, and he really likes those pre-Socratics. You gotta hand it to freaking Diogenes, Heraclitus, um, Anaximander. Oh my gosh, look at these guys. Archimedes, just coming up with ideas. The atomists, some of those guys said, I think the universe is made out of tiny, very small particles, and that they just uh, they add up to these larger objects. No one had a micron, a microscope. Um, uh, no one was able to see atoms at that level, and yet there were people in ancient Greece saying logically, this might seem to make sense. So pre-Socratics, everything heads back to them. So here's me going back, trying to investigate something. Now, maybe you'll see what I'm trying to get at. So here we go. Fragments of pre-Socratics. Fragments of pre-Socratics, the Aegean rubble all ships of thought use for ballast, with their bright canvas taut, raised against the wind of God as speculation turns a rudder toward the chartered port. If to the city of truth arrives those particles of ancient light, encircling once flippant moths toward the deepest night, some shall expire and some overreach the pall black of absolute doubt between coronal and penumbral faith. Subaltern go foundations, under representation a kind of metaphysic, trawling nets of dialectic, sweeping fishermen away, caught as they flopped dimensions off Delphic and Olympic shores on the sea from which we rise and fall. Okay, so that's it for tonight. That's tonight's Tuesdays for the poetry, 15th night, and 15th year, and the year was 2013 tonight. Makes sense now to me now. 15th night, 25 nights, 10 years from now is 2023. 10 years ago was 2013. Boom, there we go. We got it. It's up here now. I make these things, I make the announcement, and then I just forget about it. So, yeah, that's it. I don't think I should play some music, because again, I'm not that confident with my music playing because it's been too long since I've performed in front of everyone. I got way too nervous 2 nights ago, and ended up just editing out the parts that I didn't like. So I'll leave it at that. And I hope to see all of you back here for another Tuesday Nights for the Poetry next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So take care, be well, read some pre Socratics and Virgil, and why not some books on World War One as well. Do you know anything about it? Educate yourself. It's a fun thing to do. All right, take care, guys. Bye.